I added the hat, thought it might add a little bit to my persona. You'll have to tell me what you think. Corey called me one afternoon. She said, George asked me to call you, tell you that we've got some things for the garage sale for the church. Wondered if you could come by and pick them up this afternoon. And I said, well, of course. I knocked on the door. She met me at the door and said, Max, it's true, we do have some things for the garage sale, but that's not the real reason George wants to talk to you. He was out walking his little dog last night. She got away from him, ran out into traffic, and a truck ran over her, killed her. He's grieving. And I said, I understand. She said, he's back in the kitchen. We were sitting at the table and starting our conversation, and George said, Max, would I offend you if I offered you a little wine? I said, not if it's good. Corey, bring us some wine. She started to open the refrigerator door, and he said, no, bring the bottle. She reached up in the cabinet and took down a unlabeled bottle of dark red wine, poured us each a glass, and I sipped on it. Max, what do you think of the wine? I said, well, it's good, really good. Let me tell you a story. When I was a little boy, 6, 7 years old, in Sicily, my mama made the wine. She'd take off all my clothes, put me over in the vat, and I'd crush the grapes. I'd get tired. After a while, I'd say, Mama, I gotta pee. And she'd say, well, so pee. This is some of that wine. It's hard to explain how George and I became friends. I know how it started, of course. I was visiting a member of the church that we were starting in Reno, next door neighbor to George. He was out in the yard, and Ken introduced us, and we talked for a little bit. And he was in his 80s at the time, and I asked him what he did before he retired, and I can remember his response, Max, you don't want to know. So I decided not to pursue the issue. He and Corey came to church a few times, not often. And one time after he'd been to church, we were talking, and he said, Max, I see you up there in the pulpit, and I see my cousin, the Monsignor. I said, George, Monsignor, he's Roman Catholic. Well, of course. Italian? Yeah. Does he speak English? No, not a word. What does he look like? Oh, he said he's short, fat, bald-headed. I said, you look at me, long hair, gray-haired, American, Protestant, who only speaks English with a southern drawl, and you see your cousin, the Monsignor? Oh, he said, Max, it's all the same. I thought about that later, and I had hoped and wished that my congregation would have the, if not the theological understanding, at least the tolerance that George exhibited. We were friends, didn't socialize, and didn't see each other that often, so we weren't close, but we were friends. And I felt that way about George, and I know he felt that way about me, because Corey called one time after they had made a trip to Mexico. And George had run off the road in Mexico and wrecked the car and spent some time in the hospital at some critical time. Corey said it was touch and go there for a while as whether or not he would live. And at one of those times, he said, "Corey, I'm not going to die. Max won't let me die. He's my patron saint." Well, I never said that George was theologically informed or astute. I didn't bother to tell him later that patron saints were almost always Catholic, not Protestant, and of course dead. But about that garage sale, I picked up the items that they were donated, and among them was a desk, pretty nice desk. And about less than an hour after I got home, George called. "Max, have you opened the desk?" I said, "George, you want me to bring it to you, or do you want to come pick it up?" "I'll be right down." Within a few minutes, he was there, and I gave him the U.S. Army issue .38 revolver that I had found in the desk. And he started to explain. He said his nephew was a quartermaster in the Army and had run across a whole shipment of .38s where the firing pin was malfunctioning. I stopped him at that point. I said, "George, I don't want to know any more of the story." I was remembering what he had told me when we first met, when I asked him what he did before he retired, and his answer was, "You don't want to know." And I decided I didn't need to know anymore. I miss George. He was a friend. I enjoyed his respect, and I really appreciated his humor and his outlook on life. And the wine, it was really good.